Morning, this is Dave T1963. I posted up a video yesterday about some old school traditional things that we used to just accept back when I first started in archery. Uh, and then I got some comments which were cool, and some people PM me and asked me to further explain it. You know how it is when you make a video and you don't rehearse it, you just speak from the heart and stuff like that. Sometimes your words don't come across quite the way you mean it. What I was trying to relay in there is there are people that can be very accurate and consistently shoot 40-pound, 35-pound bows with carbon arrows and small fletching and become very accurate. But what you will notice is when you use small fletching, that's why bare shaft tuning has become so important, is because without that back steering, think of it as the spinning like in a barrel rifle, okay? That spinning stabilizes an arrow. But when you use those small little 1.5 inch, 2 inch fletching, I've seen some people even promoting shooting 2 2 inch feathers. When you use small fletching like that, it becomes very critical to minimize the archer's paradox. That's where the arrow goes around the bow. And you tend to shoot heavier arrows so that you don't get as much flex. And it becomes very critical that you get a bare shaft arrow flying perfect. And what I was trying to say is most archers aren't skilled enough, and even a larger percentage of everyday people hunting with bows, especially traditional bows, don't spend the adequate time to where their form is repeatably consistent, shot after shot after shot after shot after shot. That's what separates the top rated archers and the rest of us. Because most people just are not shooting. The ones that are at the very top shoot almost every day. They certainly shoot every week throughout the year. It's not something they pick up a month or two before bow season, okay? And so what I'm telling the average archer that isn't willing to invest that kind of time, and then they have the right mindset and skill set to be able to do it, which is a whole nother thing. Very few people have the ability to pull that off shot after shot after shot and do it exactly the same way, the same amount of pressure on the string, the same release, the same amount of collapse or lack of collapse, using the same amount of back tension. Most people just don't get there. And you don't have to be a very effective hunter if you use adequate fletching to stabilize your arrow. That's the difference. One, you're relying on your ability of an archer to overcome any kind of hiccup in your shooting style or anything you might encounter out in the woods, or if your form ain't exactly the same. God forbid you have to stoop over and shoot with your bow vertical under a limb. You're not going to have the same form as what you do on archery or a target range. Larger fletching helps compensate for all those mild infractions of doing it perfectly consistent. Now, I am not saying you don't need to work on your form. If you're hearing that, you're hearing the wrong thing. Yes, you need to work on your form. I do blind bale shooting. I shoot on target ranges. I work on having a good release, a consistent anchor. In fact, when I took Joel Turner's course, my shot sequence when I talk to myself is once I orientate to the target, I say, okay, here we go. And that's where I depart from what Joel teaches. I say, hit a solid anchor. My anchor is my finger right here at the corner of my nostril. I can feel that. It's bone, finger bone, the bone right here, and it's pulling against my cheekbone. I have to tell myself, hit that anchor. That takes my mind off of all the aiming stuff. Then all I do is say, hold, hold, hold until the release snaps. I'm focused on maintaining back pressure and maintaining that connection to my anchor. And I personally use 3 4-inch feathers with a pretty hard helical twist, and that stabilizes the heavy. I'm shooting, most of my bows are 55 to 60 pounds. I right now I'm shooting a 49-pound super curve from Centaur Archery, and I'm using 3 4-inch feathers with a hard helical, and I'm shooting almost 650 grain arrows out of that 49-pound bow. And it's the super curve, which to me puts more energy in an arrow than a traditional, like a longbow limb or even a traditional recurve. Not always, but I think Jim up at Centaur has a dang good design on that limb, so you can drop down on weight. Yeah, the weight of the bow comes into play when you start dropping down and you see folks saying, you know what, I'm going to go to a 35, 40-pound bow. I'm going to shoot super light carbon arrows and front load the arrow with as much weight as I can, which does help the arrow achieve a bare shaft quicker. Okay, a bare shaft quicker. And minimize the fletching. When you start doing that, now you become into that realm where that shot had better be released perfectly so that arrow does the same exact thing, because once it gets out of the bow, if you have a crappy release, let's say you break back tension a little bit and it starts to be a little bit weak, there is nothing at the back end of your arrow at that point to stabilize the arrow quickly. You're relying all on that weight up front, which does do it a little bit, but not as effectively as if you use fletching on the back side to spin the arrow. Okay? That's the point I was trying to make yesterday. And I'm not saying you can't use a 40-pound bow. I'm trying to think of the one guy I watch. I think his name's Jeff, Instinctive Archery Traditions or something like that. He's the one that convinced me to get the San Lita ILF bow that I got. That I love that bow. It's a well-performing bow. But that guy is a phenomenal shot. And you can tell he don't shoot 1 month out of the year getting ready for hunting season. It's a passion of his, and he shoots all the time. And he's got great hand-to-eye coordination. He's got very consistent form. It's very repeatable. You can see that in his videos. If you think you're going to get to that level of a shooter, shooting a month or two with that kind of equipment, I just think you're going to be disappointed out in the hunting woods. And what I'm trying to tell you is that's not even necessary. You can be a good archer. You can. I recommend practicing all year. I do practice all year, but if you're one of those people that wants to pick up a bow, compound or traditional bow, a couple, 2-3 months before season, and get to be accurate enough for hunting, then I personally would recommend a heavier weight bow, heavier arrows, and bigger fletching. That's going to compensate for any little minor variations you have on your anchor hold. How, did your arm come back the same way? Are you overdrawing? Did you underdraw a little bit? It don't, if I anchor in the corner of my mouth, I don't have to move my shoulder, and I can get a lot of variation in my draw length. Okay, you start working on some of the stuff I see in target archery where you're pulling your elbow around. The tendency I see there is people are overdrawing that, and you can get to be accurate that way. But then when you get in the woods, things change. You've been sitting for hours in the cold. You're now leaning down. It's not as easy to get that same amount of kick around or pulling your elbow around behind you. A lot of things can happen out in the woods while you're hunting that impair that practice form out on a target archery thing. It is very easy where you're standing up totally upright, 90 degree to a target, to overdraw your bow a little bit and still remain and get a consistent shot. When you start bending at the waist, like you would out of a tree stand to shoot it down, or if you're hunting in the Rocky Mountains and you bend at the waist to shoot up and all that, if you're having to shoot under limbs, over limbs, if you're having, if you get caught flat-footed and you have to just turn at the waist and turn, 45, 90 degrees to one side or another, it's going to be a heck of a lot harder to get that target archery form going. And that's where I tell you, practice like you hunt. When you're working on form, go through all the steps, make sure you're drawing you want to make sure you got a consistent draw length. You know how we used to do it in the old day? We shot pretty much off of our finger, or the shelf was cut low to the finger, and we would let me see if I can hold this and do this. You would bring, I can't do it. You'd bring the broadhead back to your finger, and when it touched your finger, you knew your draw length was the same. Now, your anchor might vary based on your shooting position and all that, but at least you had your draw length the same. That was something we did consistently back in the old days. Now I see people shooting these low weight bows, trying to shoot a 40-pound bow with a 300 spine carbon arrow, 300 grains up front, and their arrow's 5 inches in front of their thing. You're never going to be able to, outside of maintaining the same exact consistent form, you're never going to have any way of testing whether you're at full draw. If you bring the back of the broadhead to where it touches the back of your finger, you can do that. If you bring the feather to your nose, you can do it. There's ways you can do things to give you that signal that you're at full draw. But when you start cutting your arrows 4 or 5 inches past your riser because you want to shoot a stiffer arrow that don't flex as much because you're shooting a low weight bow with a lot of point weight and using smaller fletching, man, it's all about consistent form at that. That's why you see so many really great gap shooters, string walkers and all that out on a target range like 3D and stuff where they can maintain some semblance of form, man, they can be deadly accurate. But you get them up in a tree stand and they have to bend at the waist, or they have to bend and shoot under something, and their shooting goes downhill most of the time for most people. There are those people, that top 1%, that have that uncanny eyesight and hand-to-eye coordination that just seem to be able to hit no matter what. They are out there. I am not one of them. I'm an average shot at best. I have to work my butt off, and I have to shoot thousands of arrows to ingrain my sight picture under various circumstances. I can lay down on the ground and shoot my bow, and I certainly am not reaching full draw. And out to 20 yards, I feel very confident I can put it in a softball size target at 20 yards because I've shot that way hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. I shoot off my knees. I shoot from chairs. I shoot from the roofs of my house. I climb trees a lot in the off season and shoot from a tree stand. I do all those things so that my brain has got that sight picture for various ways. I know that when I have to really camp my bow horizontal in the way I anchor and stuff, that I'm going to shoot 20 yards. I'm going to shoot about 3 to 4 inches further to the right. My mind knows that now from having done it hundreds of times. So it compensates for it. When my bow can't over that far and I'm having to really torque over and shoot under a low-hanging limb, my brain compensates and picks up that sight window that's necessary for that shot, and it executes it. Okay? If you're relying on repeatable, consistent form to overcome small fletching and lightweight arrows and front-loaded arrow weight and all that kind of stuff, FOC, and all that, if that's what you're relying on, it's going to be hard for you to overcome all that unless you're one of those top 1%. And I know, I'm like you, I see hundreds of YouTube videos where people say, yeah, out to 20 yards, I can shoot 2-inch groups with my bow. Bull crap. If they can shoot at 20 yards, 2-inch groups consistently, not one time for the camera, but consistently. They should be going to all the major shoots because they're better than most people. A 2-inch group. I'm talking about 2 inches across. That's a miss 1 inch in any direction. That's getting to be world-class archery, folks. That is not the common person. And you can bet your butt the people that can do that, they're either very well gifted in hand-to-eye coordination and eyesight, or they practice a lot. And they do it using the same stance, no bending under anything, shooting over anything, no shooting uphill, downhill. They do it on a line at a known distance of 20 yards. They do the exact same draw. They use multiple touching points. Some people use a feather to the nose. Some people use a bone to anchor on. Some lock their finger right behind their earlobe. They use multiple reference points to ensure they're getting the same exact draw length. They've mastered not collapsing on the shot. They've mastered not flinching at the shot. They've mastered getting a crisp. They've mastered their craft. And they've done it over years, shooting all year long, thousands and thousands and thousands of arrows so that they can do it consistently. And that's where they shine, on a target range. And I'm not saying they can't be good hunters, because if they practice shooting out of tree stands and stuff, they can acclimate like anyone else. But even then, you'll find that most target archers are using very lightweight equipment, very lightweight arrows. And then for hunting, they tend to bump up in their bow weight and bow arrows and stuff. So once again, use what you want. I'm not saying you have to do anything different. I'm just offering you options. If you're the guy that's got a family, got a job, don't have time to shoot year round, and want to get into traditional archery, and you go out and you tried all the hype, the bear shaft. I personally can't bear shaft bows for crap, and I don't even try anymore. It's just not needed. If you're that guy and you, for whatever reason, you don't have the skill set, you don't have the time to put in the long hours of practice to get there or whatever, do yourself a favor. Try to lift weights. Get a 50-pound dumbbell and do bent over one-arm rows. That'll build up your back muscles. Get a bow trainer, whatever. Go buy a cheap 60-pound bow and just keep drawing it every day and build up your back muscles. Shoot a little heavier bow. I personally think every adult male can get into a 50-pound bow pretty easily. I don't think it's very hard to do. Get heavier weight arrows. Keep your shots to reasonable hunting lengths, 20 yards or less. Put good fletching. I would recommend go up to 5-inch, 5-inch helical twist feathers and see what that does for your ability to execute better shots. Because now you have something to help overcome any weakness in us as archers. And you're looking at a man. I used to have the crappy release. I had eye surgery that went bad a couple years back, where I had my cataracts removed, and they tore my eye sac in my left eye, and it kind of screwed up my depth perception. And that forced me to totally change how I anchor. And I struggled for 2 or 3 years until I got this anchor point now, that with my eyesight being what it is, especially at dawn and dusk, it helps me with alignment and all those things under hunting conditions, and helps overcome some of my weaknesses as an archer. If I tried to do that with a lightweight bow and arrow setup and small fletching to where I had to be perfect every time, I'm telling you, at the moment of truth in a hunting situation, when a live animal is walking out there and maybe walking, not standing still, I would blow it. I have blown it in the past. Okay? I'm not just shooting crap off here. I've tried things like everyone else. And if you picked up my bow right now, the one I'm shooting 3 bows right now, and I shoot all of them the same. I'm shooting the same exact arrow out of all 3 of them. One's a 49-pound 58-inch super curve. One of them is a Caribou Wolverine longbow at 62 pounds at my draw length. And it's cut to center, but not past center. And then I'm shooting at San Lita. I think it's got 50-pound limbs. And I'm using a springy rest because it's cut way past center and stuff like that. Every one of those bows, I'm shooting, I think it's a 28 and 7/8, because I got about a 27 and 3/4 inch draw. I think it's 28 and 7/8 inch arrow, carbon to carbon. I'm shooting 3 4-inch feathers. I'm using a gold tip nock. These are gold tip traditional arrows. They're the .246. I'm shooting a 100 grain brass insert, and I'm shooting a 200 grain field point or a 200 grain VPA 3 blade. And that arrow flies the exact same straight to the target out of all three of those bows. Now, how can that be? I guarantee you, if I strip the feathers off and bare shaft them, they're not going to fly to the same spot. But with my mechanics and the way I tune a bow, every one of those bows I can grab an arrow and go grab any one of those 3 bows, and out to 20 yards, I'm going to hit a 4 to 5 inch circle every single time, unless I totally blow the shot. You still have to have some consistency in your form, folks. You can't be plucking the string like that or collapsing at the shot or flinching. There's still some work to be done. But I can shoot that same exact arrow out of a 49-pound bow that's cut a little bit past center of the Centaur. And I want to say it's 62 pounds. I don't know. I'd have to go look at the Wolverine. That's cut just to center. And with my buildup of my arrow rest with Velcro, it shoots, the arrow's pointing off to the left quite a bit. And then that San Lita, that's a 50-pound bow. I think it's 50. It's either 50 or 55 or something like that. I don't even know anymore. 50. I think it's 50. And it's cut way past center, and I got a springy rest to bring it back out in center. But when I set every one of those bows up, I fiddled with the rest material, and the brace height and the nocking point, and I got every one of them because I used 3 4-inch helical feathers to throw an arrow right where I'm looking. Okay? That's how I tuned the bow. And that every one of those bows shoot that arrow for me with my crappy form and everything else that I do wrong to the same spot if I do my part. That's what I'm telling you is the magic of using larger fletching and heavier weight arrows. It's not just a penetration thing. And if you think just because you bump up FOC or you bump up arrow, I'm trying to think speed. If you bump up the speed and all that by shooting a lighter weight carbon and all that, that you're going to overcome and be a better archer if your form's not consistent, you're fooling yourself. You are absolutely fooling yourself. Those things do have where I was going to go with that actually was, if you think you're going to do all that and get better penetration, that is a big question mark. Because if your form breaks, if you collapse at the shot, that's going to throw off how your arrow orientates. And if you don't have the correction in the back, that arrow's not going to fly you're going to lose energy. Okay, so there's so many factors in this, folks. And what I'm saying is there's 2 ways to approach tuning a traditional bow is what I'm concerned with. 1, you can become the most precise archer, but you have to invest that kind of time, and you got to have some God-given ability to do the same exact thing, the same exact way, consistently, time after time after time after time. Good luck with that out in the hunting woods. You can choose that route. Just know that when you do so, you better be very good at bear shafting. If you can't get your arrows to fly like darts bear shafting, you're probably behind the power curve. Or you can accept the fact that you're a human being. You still work on your form, you still work on your release, but you understand that out in hunting conditions, you're going to have a crappy release from time to time. You're going to collapse from time. Sometimes you may not be able to get the full draw. Things can happen out in the woods, but they can be compensated for to some degree with larger fletching, heavier arrows, and a heavier weight bow. That's all I'm saying. So you can pick your poison. Both of them have pros, both of them have cons. I just know that for the average person, with the amount of time they're willing to invest and the natural ability, not everyone can throw a 100-mile-per-hour curveball over the plate, folks. There are people that are gifted to do certain things that the majority can't. Most of us are average at best. And for me, and what I've seen a lot of things in traditional archery, some of the old things that we used to do help compensate for those things. This new age stuff and focusing 100% on repeatable form is great if you can pull it off. I'm just telling you, be realistic in your ability to do so. Okay? Hopefully that cleared up a little bit about what I said. This video went way further than I was planning on. But once again, I just wanted to clarify, because I want you to be successful in traditional archery. It's a great sport. It's fun. I don't see how anyone can pick up a trad bow and not get hooked on it and not love to shoot all year round. I don't understand that. I love it. But I want you to be successful, okay? And there's different ways to skin a cat. So if you've tried the new age movement now with this high FOC, lightweight carbon, smaller fletching, precision, and it's all reliant on you being as consistent and stuff. Be realistic in your assessment. If you're not getting there, try something different, okay? Try a heavier arrow. Work on building up your back muscles, your chest muscles, your arm muscles, your leg muscles. All that's important. And work up to a 50, 60-pound bow if you can. Get a heavier arrow. Put good fletching on it. Feathers, I think, fly a lot better. Put a helical twist on them, okay? And then work on that and see if that don't improve your shooting. Because my guess is for at least 50, 60% of the archers out there trying trad archery, that's going to be a better path. All right, Dave T196 out. Good luck.